I don't want to spend a lot of time introducing our guest today, and I'll let him do a little self-introduction because I am delighted to have someone that I've worked with Citizen Forestry Group for a while, but I've never been as involved. David's been involved with the Citizen Forestry Group and a lot of volunteer activities for quite a while, right, David? And if he can, at the beginning of his presentation, fill us in about a little bit about what he does and how he got involved, and then tell us all about trees. Thank you so much, David, for coming in and talking to us. We're sorry we don't have a huge audience and a big room, but for whatever it's worth, we welcome you. Thank you so much.
Very happy to be here. I retired at the first of 2014, and one of the things I had heard about was the Citizen Forester program and signed up for the training like that spring. It was January 1st when I retired and signed up, and I didn't think much about it for a while, but a couple of three things happened, and suddenly I found myself, buried deep. Even was on the Cross Timbers Urban Forestry Council board for a while, which is the governing or the sponsor organization for the Citizen Forester program. I revamped the training, which has kind of got undone since COVID. But, I got in pretty deep. So I grew up in far west Texas where it was a very dense forest, but the trees were only that far apart, that high, and about that big around, called shin high oak trees, which then we moved to Austin when I was in junior high, and I fell in love with trees, particularly live oaks, and have had an affinity for them. Just a love without any real knowledge, but the Citizen Forester program allowed me to get really involved. So Hester asked me to talk about understory trees or smaller trees. And so I do have a focus and preference for Texas natives, true Texas natives. For instance, the crepe myrtles. Any crepe myrtle lovers in here?
We have one.
Crepe myrtles are best pruned at the ground.
Yes.
Not up here, at the
And
ground.
they come right back too.
Yeah, I know, I'm fighting them. They came with the house.
Yeah.
But this is a tree that you won't see any Texas insect using except one. You know what the one is?
Aphids.
The aphids.
Aphids.
The ants, well, you'll see the ants that are eating the aphids. You'll see the ladybugs, but you'll never see anything nectaring on one of their flowers. So I do have, these 7 trees are all Texas native trees. Yes, sir.
So why won't anything nectar on them?
They come from China, and I don't know why the insects decide they don't, they're prejudiced, but they are. They make pretty flowers, but and as we're going to hear, so do a couple of these trees that do even better than the crepe myrtle, as I hear. All right, we're going to start with the Carolina buckthorn. Who all knows what one of those is? Yeah?
Yeah.
They are fairly rare in this part of the world. In fact, at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden, I think there's one in the entire park that was planted not too long ago, and I haven't been there since they started charging admissions because that ticked me off so bad.
Yeah.
And I won't get into that little sermon. But this is the Carolina buckthorn is it's an excellent understory tree, adaptable, attractive, ecologically useful without being fussy. It behaves more like a large shrub or a small tree. It's typically only 10 to 20 feet high, maybe up to 30 feet if it's just right. It has a rounded, somewhat open crown. The width of that crown is spread 8 to 15 feet, so it's not a very big tree. It's often multi-trunked. unless it's carefully tended to as it's growing. It is partial to, it does well in partial shade or full sun. In shade, it tends to be looser and, less coverage, more upright. When it's got the sun, it'll, blossom, it'll make more stems and branches and leaves, etc. So it works well understory, under oaks, particularly post oaks and blackjack oaks for you folks over here in the sandy soils. It is deciduous, drops the leaves in the fall. The flowers are small, greenish, are not very showy. Late spring, early summer, short kind of window. It does make the small berries that are, they go from green to red to black as they ripen. And so sometimes the tree will have all three colors on it at the same time, which is showy. Highly adaptable soils. It does well in sand, clay, limestone-based. So those of us in Fort Worth, limestone is significant. It does want to be well drained. It doesn't like to live in things that stay in soil that stays wet. Like all trees, it does need to be watered well for the first 3 years of their life. But once the Carolina buckthorn is established, it doesn't need much water. It does well. Will tolerate drought when that happens. So it's good in a low maintenance native yard.
Seen that red.
Wildlife like the berries, birds. It is a host plant for several species of butterflies. It does provide in the full sun cover and nesting structure for birds that nest at that level. It does well, like I said, under the oaks, elms. It also can form a screen. So if you've got an area that put a couple, 3 of them and screen an area. Particularly if it's a transition between your yard and a wooded area, make that kind of line difference. So it can, again, be a small multi-stem tree or a single stem. Can be pruned into more of a shrub. So it's in the pros, it's native, well adapted to North Texas, handles a wide range of soils, wildlife friendly, low maintenance once established. Cons, it's not very showy, and it can look leggy and too much shade. The fruit can be mildly messy, as typically that happens, particularly if you have it, near a patio or something like that. And you may have some suckers that you have to deal with because it does spread naturally through suckers as well as through the seeding and berries. I'll talk about this here, but this is going to apply to all of them. As everybody at this table knows, the best time to plant is in the fall. Trees in particular, because it'll spend the winter developing a root system. Not worried about the top, and then springtime comes and it's got roots enough to go to work and establish itself. Light structural pruning as it grows. Structural pruning is one of the things that I learned is very important in young trees, but you really got to know what you're doing. And it's amazing because I've got one little book, little leaflet thing that I picked up that's out of print, and it talks about things that I haven't found anywhere else. The kinds of things to do and don't in structural pruning. And of course, mulching around a new tree really helps them get started. You want that root flare, the first root that comes off, you always want that above the ground. So putting the thing around the tree and covering it up, and you're killing the tree. That when you think about what happens there, you got all these roots, little bitty guys that are coming together, and they come up into the tree into tubes. And when that root flare is wet all the time and it can rot, those tubes get disrupted, and there's the phloem and the xylem cambium layers are destroyed, and there's just a little bitty area that is live on a tree. All that center wood is dead, the bark is dead, there's just a few cells in between those two that's actually live wood. And we need to do all we can to protect that, particularly when they're getting started, when they're growing up. So the next one I'm going to talk about is a desert willow. The Vitex competes with it here in this part of the world, but the Vitex is an imported plant, and maybe it's prettier and showier, like down the Chisholm Parkway. They've planted a bunch of them, and when they're in bloom, it's kind of fun, but the desert willow would have been a much better choice. So it's one of the best performing native flowering trees that we have, small trees. Here in North Texas, it does extremely well in the sun and the heat. It's not a willow. I know that's what it says, but it just looks like one, but it's not really a willow tree at all. It gets typically 15 to 25 feet, maybe up to 30 again in ideal situations. The crown is 10 to 20 feet. It's most often multi-trunked with a kind of a loose, irregular crown, which actually makes it nice if you want things planted underneath it, because sunlight can get to things being that are grown underneath it. In full sun, it's more balanced and rounded. In shade, it gets a bit leggy and sparse, but it'll grow there. So it's less of a filler and more of a feature tree, one that you'd have out to where the eye would go to it. It is deciduous. Again, everybody knows what that means, so I won't define that every time. But it makes these flowers that are trumpet-shaped, different colors, white, pinks, lavenders, often with yellow or purple throats. So the blooms are very interesting. And it blooms late summer, late spring through summer. And it'll often repeat blooms after a rain. So you can get a second blooming. So it's one of the longest blooming native plants that we have. So it needs full sun if you really want a well performer. It does prefer well-drained soil, but it'll handle sand, rock, poor soils. It's a desert willow. It doesn't like clay soils that stay wet. That's one of the things that it does not do well in. So it's a true tough love plant. The more you leave it alone, the better off it is. Bees, butterflies, hummingbirds all take advantage of unlike the crepe myrtle. Seeds are eaten by some birds. So it's great in the xeriscape or low water landscapes. And it's great for breaking up a heavy oak dominance yard if you want something different. So it has a long flowering season, grows heat, drought tolerant, fast growing when young, beautiful informal structure, and it's a pollinator magnet. Bad news is it's messy, flowers, long seed pods. It can look scraggly without pruning or sufficient sun. Has a shorter lifespan, just 20 to 40 years. And it's not well suited for shade or wet soils. So it's one of the other things I teach in another one of my classes. Trees do everything slow. And we need to learn to think in tree time when we're working on them, doing things with them, and thinking about how to manage them. And so, for a tree, 20 to 40 years is a very short lifespan. compared to 400 or 500 for a good oak tree. Next, so I assume everybody, going back to the desert, everybody was used to those. You've seen them, know what they are. There's a nice example in the botanic area that's in the parking lot. That little area that is on the west side, that's a strip that the gate onto Trail Drive. There's a desert willow and a vitex side by side, and so you can look at the two there. And on the other end of that area is the next tree, an Eve's necklace pod, often called an Eve's necklace. Y'all familiar with the Eve's necklace pod? Yep. So this is typically, again, in ideal conditions, we'll get 15 to 25 feet, a 10 to 20 foot crown width, usually multi-trunked. If you work real hard, you can train it into a single trunk. So it's moderately dense, but a little more filled than the desert willow. But with age, it develops graceful, slightly spreading kind of canopy. It is deciduous. It makes flowers that are pink or rosy, lavender, pea-like flowers, so they're small. So they're showy but very subtle. But the signature feature, of course, is the pods. These are seed pods that are black, and they look like a necklace of beads. They persist on it through the fall and the winter. They're hard, glossy, dark brown, but they're toxic. So you don't want to eat them. They're not things to eat. In fact, there's limited amount of wildlife that use it because it also can be toxic to, not all, but most wildlife, yeah. So they do like limestone soils. They do well on woodland edges or open rocky areas. They're best in the full sun to partial shade. In fact, the one at the Botanic Garden is next to a rock wall, and so it's the west sun is pretty well blocked from getting on it. And one of the other things, just in general about trees, left to the wild, the root diameter will be 2 to 3 times the crown diameter. And so, yeah, all the way out there,
Yeah, they
those
come
roots
up,
can,
huh?
and the roots aren't very deep typically. In the sandy soils around here, they may be a little deeper. Certainly the piney woods in West Texas are a breed that put down deeper roots. But, most live oaks don't have roots that are more than 12, 18 inches deep. There's nothing down there. The roots are smart. They go where there is organic material and water to get to.
Yeah,
There's no reason to go down there to just dead dirt. But again, fits well in the native landscapes, which I know y'all have. And the pods are a great conversation piece. When people come over and
it's very pretty,
Yeah.
lacy, very nice.
look at them and think about them. So they're native and well adapted to this part of the world, to North Texas. The unique ornamental seed pods handles limestone soils very well. Moderate in size, as long as you don't let them grow. Low maintenance once established. The seeds are toxic, bad news. Slow growing, not a dramatic fall color. The pods eventually drop, so they have to be cleaned up typically. Either that or you'll have even more. And they do require that constant maintenance.
If you don't pick
For
them
the,
up.
yeah. Next one, Mexican plum. Y'all know the Mexican plums?
Oh, we know it, and we love it.
So the Mexican plum is one of the signature native trees in this part of the world. And it's arguably one of the more dramatic visual trees there is. It flowers before it leaves out. So you get this white flowery tree before there's leaves. You get this pure, and it'll cover the whole tree.
Very fragrant too.
Very fragrant, very dramatic, and those blooms last quite a while. Again, a 15 to 25 foot tree, 15 to 25 foot crown, most often a single trunk, sometimes multi. Out where it's it's not fighting for sun. It'll be a well-rounded crown and fairly dense. So it has more of a traditional tree shape than what we've talked about so far. Cast a moderate shade, but you have to be on a chair or on the ground underneath it because it doesn't get. It is deciduous. The fall color is yellow to orange. The leaves will turn that kind of a color. We've talked about the blooms. But they go all the way from late winter to early spring. It makes these little small plums, which are quite edible. They're tart. But you can make your own jam out of it, depending on how much sugar you want to use. But
Wine too.
yeah, you can make. Yep, that. I don't know that I've ever had Mexican plum wine, but I'll bet that's pretty good.
David, can you think of another one that looks like that, that's much taller? I have one in the neighborhood that I think is probably double that height that you're supposed to have for the plum. And I'm wondering if there's another cultivar or something that is, just taller.
So does it do all these things I've talked about? It could be just.
Follows completely our.
It could be a Mexican plum that's just in the right place.
I'm thinking that is, but I'm wondering if that's often true that they go quite a bit taller.
I'm not.
Because this
What'd I
is
say?
definitely power line problem.
Oh wow. I'm unaware of anything,
It's okay. Thanks.
particularly one that would bloom before it leaves out.
Yeah.
That's pretty unique. And even though it's called Mexican plum, it's actually more native to Texas and Mexico. So it is best in full sun. It'll tolerate partial shade. The flowers do best when it's out in full. And there's more than one of these, again, at the Botanic Garden that's between the parking lot and University. So you can see it there, at least, hopefully it's still
And
there.
the flowers, they smell like honey.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have a beautiful honey scent.
right.
Very, very nice.
They're very nice. Limestone soils, clay, as long as it's not waterlogged, or sandy soils. It does fairly well. It just needs good drainage. It's moderately drought tolerant, not quite as good as the desert willow, but it can handle water variations. The flowers support the early pollinators in particular. The fruit feeds birds and mammals as well. And it can provide good cover and nesting structure for birds. So pros, obviously the beautiful early season flowers, fragrant blooms, edible fruit, native, well adapted, and strong wildlife support. The fruits do make a mess on the con side. It can sucker. And so you have to, but it's manageable, probably more manageable than Eve's necklace.
Yeah,
Yes.
it really is.
It's susceptible to borers and black knot, which is a fungus that sometimes affects them. And again, a 20 to 40 year lived plant. It does require some structural pruning if you're, as it grows, keeping the suckers cleaned out. And you don't want to excessively water, and you certainly don't want to excessively fertilize it. In fact, most trees should not be fertilized. It causes weak growth. It's much better to let the tree live on tough love, and there'll be a much stronger tree than a fertilized tree. All right, next one's one of my favorites, the Yaupon Holly. It's interesting tree in my opinion. But again, 10 to 20 feet is typically as high as they get. An 8 to 15 feet crown. It doesn't get very big. It does very well under my live oaks. I've got 3 of them living under my live oaks, and they're a bit, they don't fill up a lot of space, but they do add some interest. And they're up next to the house. They were there when we bought the house. So it's a natural understory tree out in the oak forest. You'll find them. It's naturally multi-stemmed, but if you work hard when they're young, it can be a single stem. It's the only one in here that's not deciduous. It stays green all year round. One of the interesting things, though, is that it will self-prune in shade. If left alone in full sun, it'll make a bigger crown, but in shade, it'll self-prune. But if you do prune a leaf off or a limb off, or it self-prunes, it's gone forever. You won't see new stems, branches coming off of its trunk or stems. Once gone, they're gone forever. It does make berries, but it's a male-female kind of plant. They don't have to be right next to each other, but you need a male and a female in order to get the berries. The berries are well used by native, the birds, and in particular.
Wind?
Oh, I don't know. They'll take a
Well, it's got to
hurricane.
carry the berry.
Oh,
So it's the birds
the
got to.
pollen.
Yeah. The birds have to carry the berry in order.
Oh, the seed, yeah.
Right, the
yeah.
seed.
They will,
Yeah.
that's one of its propagation, is, birds eat the seed and poop it, and now you got a nice place for that's one of their natural, yes. As well as it does do suckers. Mine are trying to multiply through its suckers. So it has, both of those kind of ways to spread naturally. It's very responsive to structural pruning. You want a branch to go that way, just trim off the ones that are going away you don't want it, and that's where it'll go. So it is one of the more shapeable trees. So full sun or full shade, it'll grow in either, and everything in between. The denser, in full sun, it'll get denser. It's more open in the shade. Mine are pretty open. Very adaptable soil, sand, clay, acidic. It doesn't care. Limestone, it does fine. Highly drought tolerant once established. So it's one of the toughest natives that you can have. It'll live through anything.
And the berries are so pretty.
The berries make, attracts a cedar waxwings as well as mockingbirds and other ones, and provides nesting in the denser crowns. So it can be actually a winter lifeline for birds because the berries last and they can make use of them well into the winter. So it's the only North American plant that has caffeine. And the Native Americans used to make a drink that they didn't drink routinely, but they'd have these ceremonies and they'd get a little tipsy on the caffeine. So I have no idea how you do it, but I assume it's boiling the leaves and extracting the tea. But it was called a black drink by the Comanches, but I'm not real sure. The next one is a Lacey Oak. So this one's a little bit different because it's a little bigger than what we've talked about so far. But it's one of the best small oaks that we have here in Texas. So it looks like a regular oak tree, it just doesn't get as big. So one of the things that it's often used for is a street tree. So if you've got a little area, between the sidewalk and the street, you want an oak tree, this is a good choice. And its roots won't tear up the sidewalk the same way that a live oak. And it doesn't have the root need that the bigger trees have. Fort Worth has a program where owners can come pick up a tree to put in that first 10 feet of the easement that the city has. To me, that's the only thing they ought to give out. But it's one of the few that get chosen, because I work that every once in a while as, people come, so what are you looking for? And it's all kind of, well, how about a Lacey Oak? I want that. It gets 25 up to 40 feet high, occasionally up to 50 feet. 25 to 40 foot crown, so it's kind of a, it's not like a live oak, but almost always a single trunk. Makes a good shade, but it's not a real heavy shade, so things can grow underneath it. But it is deciduous, although it can be semi-overgreen here in North Texas because it holds its leaves until the late winter before it finally drops them. But there is that period where it'll be. Do you guys know what happens to the green? What happens to the chlorophyll? So why do the the leaves turn brown in the wintertime? The tree will actually suck that chlorophyll back down into the tree. The leaves fall off. Next spring, the chlorophyll comes back up and goes back to work. Amazing how smart these guys are. Yeah, I get excited when I learn about them. So it's fine in limestone soils, rocky slopes, well-drained uplands. So it's a natural fit for limestone-heavy areas like over in Fort Worth. But it doesn't like water that just sits. It does like full sun more than dappled shade. So it's not really an understory tree, so I'm kind of cheating here. But again, once it's established, that needs water while it's growing, but once it's established, it's very drought tolerant. You don't have to mess with it. Produces the acorns, which is valuable for the squirrels and a few birds. But it also supports several caterpillars, which also feed the birds. But it can be a larval host. So the pros: it's native, well adapted, makes this blue-green foliage. It's strong, well-formed canopy, drought tolerant, smaller than most. So it's manageable in size, good wildlife support. Cons: it does need good drainage. It doesn't need to be in wet soils constantly. It's slower growing than other fast ornamental trees. The acorns can be some litter, and it's not as dense as shade. So if you're looking for a shady area, that's not going to be normal. The best long-term investments: it's tough, beautiful in its own quiet way, ecologically valuable, and just the right size for many a thoughtful. You want to guess what the last one is? Come on. No?
Pinkerton?
No, that's too big.
Dogwood.
Dogwood? No, that's way too big.
How about a possum?
Ding!
Yeah,
We have a winner.
good choice.
Which one? Redbud.
Right.
Yes.
So the Texas redbud in particular, there's Eastern and there's Texas. They're a little different. But the Texas redbud is drought-tolerant cousin of the Eastern, but it's much better suited for heat, limestone soils, and other Texas kind of conditions. Gets up to 15 to 25 feet high, 15 to 25 foot crown. Normally it's multi-trunk. Again, can be trained to a single. Rounded spreading canopy, moderately dense, and it gets wider than tall with age. So this one goes the other way than some of the other ones we've talked about. It is deciduous, but it makes flowers. It makes these pink to magenta flowers. They bloom in the early spring, March in our part of the world typically, and they're attached directly to the branches or the trunk. So it can be, again, like the Mexican plum, a very visually striking kind of plant. The Texas leaves are more leathery, and the Easterns are more soft. And so, one of the easy ways you can tell what you've got. And the Texas are they're more glossy, and they often have a slightly wavy edge around the edge. Again, limestone soils, rocky slopes, woodland edges is where they're found in the wild. They do very well in full sun, but also tolerate partial shade. Afternoon shade is the best. The morning sun doesn't stress them quite as much as the afternoon sun. Again, well-drained soils, limestone's great. Again, doesn't like that soggy soil. Good drought tolerance once established, way better than the eastern, because the easterns used to get more rain. The early flowers support bees and other pollinators. The seeds are occasionally eaten by some wildlife, and it can provide moderate cover to certain wildlife. Again, kind of a specimen tree where you want something to stand out in your yard. Can work well near your patio or other seating areas. Pairs great with a Mexican plum. So pros: stunning early spring color, native and adaptive to our area of Texas, better drought tolerant than the eastern, manageable size, works well in both sun and light shade. Cons: shorter lifespan, that 20 to 30 years is typical, and it can be prone to leaf scorch and extreme heat, occasional borers or diseased if stressed. The seed pods can be somewhat messy, and the branch structure can be somewhat irregular. So again, light structural pruning when they're young. You'll get a lot of crossing. I've got one that's growing in my yard that's fairly young. I bought it at a plant sale, and it's now up yay high, and it's under. I planted it under some crepe myrtles, and I'm trying to talk my wife into letting me take you out and let this thing. But so far, she has not relented.
This is a good tree to end on, because this is the one that he's talked about, that the little blossoms taste very good. The little blossoms are very edible.
They're very
Just
sweet.
make sure you're not eating little bugs with them, because there's a lot of insects that love the redbud. But they are. You eat the little blossoms and they're real crunchy. I'm very tempted to get them off my tree, but then I want to see them on the tree. So I only eat a few of them. But they're very good. Try it. David, I'm sure we probably could sit for hours with questions.
Right, there's so
If there are any
many.
special questions you have, make sure you catch them. And what a treat to really look closely at a few of our trees.
Hey, I think it deserves a good hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Being so flexible. Yes.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
No worries at all, and thank you all for being a good audience.